just a history fact with that normally wouldn't get told during Black History. Mostly during Black History, we focus on Martin Luther King's, the Rosa Parks, and Frederick Douglass, and people like that. But we don't get into some of the other things that happen in our history. And Black history, I don't know what the feedback is. Um, Testimony, okay. Black history was created by Carter G. Wilson in 1926. And the reason why it was created, it was to educate the public on Black heritage and their accomplishments. The reason why Carter G. Woodson, 1926, created Black history was to educate the public on Black heritage and their accomplishments. It was designed to provide materials in direction for educators, listen, to include Black history in their curriculums. Black history was not in the curriculum. It wasn't taught. And so, because it wasn't taught, people can tell your story how they want to tell it. And they can distort your story because they are the ones that's telling it. So Carter G. Woodson thought that it was important to include Black history in the school curriculum. In 2023, Governor Ron DeSantis stated that enslaved people benefited from slavery. See, he's writing a history. If you don't tell the story, somebody else is going to tell it, and they're not going to tell it how it was. He said that enslaved people benefited from slavery because the skills they learned could be applied for their own personal benefit. So in other words, he left out the beatings. He left out the cruel punishment. He left out being hung on trees and your bodies became what they call it, strange fruit. Y'all know what strange fruit is? Strange fruit is when they left your bodies on the tree for the birds to come and pluck and eat. Left all that out. But that was a benefit. Y'all benefited. Y'all, the skills y'all learned, though, you benefited from it. And when he was challenged by historians, and when he was told that that wasn't right, after he said, let me clarify, that I meant to say that the skills were a benefit in spite of slavery, not because of slavery. But if you leave it to them to tell the story, our kids will grow up and say, you know what, slavery wasn't so bad. It was so bad that you had to sleep with the chickens. And they only had one bed for 16 people. And the only person that slept on that bed was the elderly. Everybody else slept on the dirt floor with the chickens. But if you don't know that, slavery was a benefit. This is why we must continue to tell our history and not leave it in the hands of others. The paper that you have was a man who served in World War I. And it reads, he survived World War I, then America took his sight. February 12th, 1946. Not so long ago. 1946. A Greyhound bus cutting through the Jim Crow South. A young black soldier still wearing his uniform. Still wearing his uniform because he was proud of it. His name was Isaac Woodard Jr. He was 26 years old, freshly honorably discharged after more than 3 years of service in the Pacific. He had unloaded ammunition under fire, endured brutal conditions as a longshoreman, and done everything his country asked of him. He was finally going home to North Carolina carrying the quiet belief that service meant something. It did not protect him. A simple request, a lethal response. Somewhere after leaving Georgia, Woodard politely, listen to my words, Woodard politely asked the white bus driver for a restroom stop. This is before they had bathrooms on the bus. You know, you can go back of the bus. They didn't have it back then. So if you needed to go to the restroom, you would ask the bus driver and he would stop at the nearest place to let you off to go to the restroom. So he politely asked the white bus driver for a restroom stop. That was it. No shouting, no threats, just a human need after a long ride. The driver refused. At the next stop, the driver called the police. Local officers arrived. Among them was Police Chief Scholl. Without credible allegations, without concern for safety, they pulled Woodard off the bus. What followed was not law enforcement, it was punishment. Woodard was beaten with batons while still in uniform. The blows were aimed at his face, but by the time they were done, both of his eyes were destroyed. He would never see again. Justice upside down. The next morning, blind and in pain, Woodard was taken before a local judge, not to receive medical care, not to be protected as a veteran, but to be charged. He was convicted of drunk and disorderly conduct and fined. Only days later, after his family reported him missing, was he located and transferred to the Veterans Administration Hospital. Doctors confirmed what the law refused to acknowledge. The damage was permanent. A soldier had been blinded on America's soil by American police. When the story broke, the nation shuddered. Black newspapers told the truth first. Civil rights organizations demanded action, and then a powerful voice carried the story into white living rooms across the country. Orson Welles used his national radio program to expose what happened, condemning the violence and naming the attacker as Officer X, when others were afraid to speak. The outrage reached the White House when Harry S. Truman learned that a uniformed veteran had been beaten blind without consequence. He was shaken. He ordered a federal investigation and directed the Justice Department to prosecute Chief Scholl for violating Woodard's civil rights. For a moment, it looked like accountability might arrive. The verdict that told the truth about the system. The case went to federal court. The jury was all white. When you get that letter in the mail to go to be on a jury, do it. The jury in this case were all white. After about half an hour of deliberation, they what? Acquitted Shaw. No punishment, no consequences, no restoration of sight. The message was unmistakably a black veteran's life could be destroyed, and the system would call it lawful. Isaac Woodard Jr. paid the price with his eyes, but his suffering cracked the nation's conscience. President Truman did not forget. In the months that followed, he established the first National Civil Rights Commission. In 1948, he issued executive orders disregarding the armed forces and federal workplaces, foundational steps towards the modern civil rights movement. Progress came late, and it came unevenly, but it came because the truth could no longer be ignored. Woodard lived the rest of his life without sight. He died in 1992. He never got his vision back. He never saw justice done for himself. But his name became a turning point. His story exposes a hard lesson Black America has always known. Service does not guarantee safety. Patriotism does not cancel racism. Injustice, when it comes, often comes because people refuse to be silent. Isaac Woodard Jr. fought for democracy overseas. His blinding forced America to confront how little democracy had he had at home. And the truth still matters because remembering is one way we keep the next injustice from hiding in the dark. Amen. Amen.